I wanted to introduce the team members. Today we'll be planning our course out to the XP-47 that went down in August 4th, 1942. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt was a World War II aircraft that was built on Mitchell Field, Long Island by Republic Manufacturing. It was developed from 1941 to 1945. It had a primary armament of 8 50 caliber machine guns, and it carried a bomb load of 2,500 pounds. Also, it was the heaviest fighter plane that was manufactured during World War II. The P-47 was designed around the powerful Pratt & Whitney engine, 2800 Wasp engine, which was used by the United States in World War II. The Thunderbolt was an effective short to medium range fighter plane that was used in both the European theater and the Pacific theater. With me right now is our lead photographer and videographer. It is Anatoly Maruk and Charlie Lampasso, backup rescue diver, dive master, and video cameraman. And I'm Kirby Kurkomelis, and welcome to the Underwater Classroom. Charlie?
Yeah, I remember last time when we went out, it's pretty much mud bottom, real low visibility, decent sized current, so just gotta make sure we're being safe when we get out there. Try to hook right into the wreck.
Now when you're talking about the visibility, what kind of visibility do you have?
Visibility starts out great at the surface, and then pretty much goes down to 0 and dark. Very dark.
Now the problem we're going to have is once we get out to the wreck, what's going to happen is that we're going to have to throw a buoy in to mark the wreck, and I'm going to have to go over the side.
You have to pull a water hoop.
Basically, I'm going to jump over the side with the chain in my hand, drop down about 50, 60 feet into the mud, and then swim over and tie us into the wreck. Today, the Underwater Classroom team is going out to dive the wreck of the XP-47 out of Republic Aviation in Farmingdale. The XP-47 went down in 1942. It was being demonstrated to the Army Air Corps. The plane went up, it had some difficulty, the pilot bailed out, and it wound up sinking in Oyster Bay Harbor. We located the wreck in 2012. Today we're going back to dive it again to document the wreck. I hope you enjoy the show. Let's take a look at our map. We had our course out. We have our plane. We're going to travel about 4 or 5 miles out of the inlet to an undisclosed location. We're going to jump in the water, and we're going to film the entire wreck.
Well, let's do it.
Do it. Behind me. Right side. Yeah.
It's right here on the wow.
Starboard side. Here we are, going over the side. As you can see, the water is a little green in color. I am heading down the line. I'm carrying a rope with us so I can tie onto the wreck, and that way we can secure where we're going so we don't get lost. We want to always come back to the anchor line. I'm traveling down the line, and you can see the heavy silt, you can see the microorganisms in the water, and we're continuing. The water is getting darker and darker. We'll be on the bottom in a few minutes. Still heading down the line. Visibility is about 2 to 3 feet. Finally, we hit the chain, and then the bottom itself. There's a very silt bottom. As you can see, there's tiny little shrimps running along the sand. Today, we are at the Cradle of Aviation in Uniondale, New York, home of the old Mitchell Field Air Force Base from the 40s and the 50s. Many planes took off from this area over the years. Today, we're going to go inside and we're going to take a look at our XP-47B aircraft. This is one of the last P-47s that were built during World War II. This is a descendant of the prototype P-47, which we found in Long Island Sound. Swimming along the bottom, there happens to be a debris field. I'm moving a piece of the cockpit area off to my side. You can see the silt. Here is a drawing of the plane that we made after many, many dives. Swimming along the cockpit area, you can see white corals popping up everywhere. A lone intake air cooling system. And in the foreground, you can see the stainless steel bulkhead wall where we tied in with the chain. Going down to the bottom, we're starting to head towards the wing. We're sitting in front of the left wing. As you can see, the P-47 Warburg was a very strong fighting machine. It contained 4 50 caliber machine guns on each wing. In the wing area, we did not find any 50 caliber machine guns because this was the first plane made P-47 prototype. As we're going around the wing, we're looking around, the silt is still there. Buoyancy is very important because you don't want to get stuck on top of the wreck. You'll cut your suit and wind up in trouble with all the loose wires and cables there. Traveling west now, we're heading back towards the airplane. Jagged pieces of metal. Superstructure is corroded. A lone sea urchin guards the wreck. Continuing towards the cockpit, we come across one of the bulkhead walls with an air vent. The plane had many air vents. As you see, the visibility is starting to change. More silt is being picked up. Visibility is getting less and less. Our visibility on this day was about a foot. We had multiple flashlights available and lighting. Now, this is the exact cooling system of the plane. Supercharger and cooling air intake. A lone blackfish swims and guards the wreck. Checking my gauge now for my depth and time. Plenty of air to go. Moving along the top of the aircraft, there's plenty of cables. You can see our grappling hook where we tied in. And my flashlight, because I'm working on removing gauges that I found in the mud. A lone pulley for the avions is there. Now you can see our rope that we use to tie on to the chain and to the aircraft so we can find our way back to the anchor chain, because the visibility is getting less and less. You can see the silt, and the current is starting to change now. Now we're back on the firewall. You can see the little ribs in between. And this protected the pilot from the engine and forward gun fire. Again, we're back at the rear bulkhead wall. And you can see another air intake for cooling. Plenty of cables and wires everywhere. A few minnows swim by the anchor line. The current is starting to run now. Holding the camera is very, very difficult. Here's a picture of the superstructure of the front of the aircraft without the engine. That's where we are in the video, on the bulkhead wall. That's our starting point, and that's our ending point. Now you can take a look from the bulkhead wall to the rear of the plane. That's where the plane is put together in two pieces. In the cockpit area, jagged metal, gauges have collapsed, hoses have collapsed. We're going over the top of the aircraft now, and you see the stainless steel wall, which I highlight in the diagram. This stainless steel wall protected the pilot from getting shot. We'll continue along. As you can see, there's a lot of cable. That's the biggest danger of this dive, getting caught in the cable and not being able to get yourself out. That's why when you dive this plane, you have to have a buddy. Here we come across another air intake to the right. Because of the extreme heat that the plane put out, cooling the aircraft was very important. Swimming along the starboard wing, you can see the ribs, the superstructure support that hold the wings on. Again, the aluminum skin is gone. Half of the wing is in the mud, and half of the wing is above the water. We're swimming along the starboard side. There is some garbage in the water, some debris. Again, a lot of white corals, soft corals. But there is an absence of fish, lobsters, and crabs. Coming along the starboard wall, we're rounding the corner and heading back to the superstructure now, as you can see in the diagram. Again, there are jagged pieces of metal sticking up everywhere. Very easy for a diver to cut a suit or get entangled. Moving along cautiously, I'm examining all pieces of the wreckage. Again, more cable, more of the ribs showing. This metal is as sharp as a razor blade and will cut the suits. We're in the rear of the plane of the P-47. This is where we have the two exhaust vents. And both of them are facing the rear wheel. As you can see, we have the tire, the rods. Right here you have two exhaust vents from the turbochargers. What happened is the heat from the turbochargers heated the rod and the tire, causing them to spark and cause a fire. At this point in time, the stick went dead on the P-47, and this is when Fillmore decided to jump. Continuing along the wing, because the wings are the most prominent structure of the aircraft. The aircraft is broken in two. We have the front of the aircraft up to the cockpit area on one end, and we have the rear of the aircraft off to the side with the rudder, the wheel. Continuing along, there's plenty of coral, which I've mentioned before, ropes, cables, but again, no sea life. Very, very few fish do you see on the wreck. Here we are taking a look at the P-47 wheel well area, the tire, and the cover. And there's the wheel in the lower right-hand corner. That is the right wheel of the aircraft, right next to our grappling hook. I did not see it when I came down. I had to go around the aircraft a few times to find out where everything was and to take a better mental picture of what I was doing. Again, more cables. This plane was made up of 10,000 pieces of material. There we have the oxygen hose and the oxygen gauges attached, which is also attached to the regulator that gives the flow of oxygen to the pilot, as you can see in our diagram. Again, surrounded by copper tubing, copper wire, and this is part of the cockpit area where some of the gauges are on the floor of the aircraft. This piece was recovered, and this is the gauges for the oxygen. Tells how much oxygen pressure you have and what's left. As soon as we picked it up, you can see that the silt was all over the place. Here's a picture of the cockpit, and you can see the 2 foot pedals on the bottom, and you can also see our oxygen gauges to the right above the right pedal. When we took the gauge out of the water, this is what it looked like back and forwards. Back in the cockpit area, there seems to be more debris and more chances to identify the aircraft with certain types of gauges. Of course, this is a picture of Anatoly, my dive partner. As we're swimming around the wreck, the silt is building up. Another look at our gauges. The tide is coming in. Our depth is getting deeper. We did 25 hours of videotaping on this aircraft, and our best was about 15 minutes of underwater footage. Now we're heading back up the anchor line. In my hand